I just showed you the logic of chi-square. Now let me show you how the statistic is actually computed. Go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, Crosstabs. Let's now ask for a table that superimposes the two tables I just showed you. Check Observed and Expected, and click Continue. Now let's go back out by clicking Continue and then go into the Statistics box. And here you select chi-square. Click Continue. And then OK. The table containing both the observed and the expected count is here. The table containing the chi-square statistic is below. As you can see, if you choose from among these statistics the Pearson chi-square, you get a value of 6.6, which is significant at the 0.010 level. This chi-square indicates that there is indeed a relationship between sex and football in the Virginia population. Now the problem is that this table is full of statistics. Which one would you use? Now, we have a 2x2 table that we used for the chi-square with 22 observations. See? Here yes and no, female and male, gives us a 2x2 table. For 2x2 tables, the rule of thumb is this. If your sample size is greater than 50, use the Pearson chi-square. If your sample size is between 20 and 50, use the Yates correction for continuity instead. It is a conservative correction of the Pearson chi-square. If your sample is less than 20, use the Fisher's exact test. So, because our sample size is only 22, we should use the Yates correction, not the uncorrected Pearson chi-square. In our case, this means that our test is significant at the 0.032 level, not at the 0.010 level. But since this number is still very small, we can still reject the null hypothesis and conclude that in Virginia there is a relationship between sex and affinity for football. Obviously, it's always better to have a larger sample size. Now, what to do when you have a larger table, one that's larger than 2x2? The variables we used in this example had two categories each. Sex had male and female, football had yes and no, so this gave us a 2x2 table. Sometimes, however, you deal with variables that have more than two categories, and then the table becomes larger than 2x2. If you're dealing with tables that are larger than 2x2, and you have cells with an expected count less than 5, you should not use the chi-square statistic, unless you can collapse cells and thus push up the expected count for each cell. Okay, here you can see the expected count. This is important. Now, in cases like that, the best idea might just be to increase sample size so you don't run into these problems. Now, in addition to obtaining the chi-square statistic, which tells you whether a relationship between variables is significant, you may want to find out more about the direction and the strength of the relationship. And you do this by computing the so-called measures of association. You can do this by going to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, and Crosstabs, and click on the Statistics button. And here you see you can choose from among a number of measures of association. As you see here, there are some measures for nominal data, others for ordinal data. In choosing a measure of association, there are a number of questions to consider because every measure of association differs from the other. So, for instance, the questions are: does the measure indicate the direction of a relationship by taking on negative and positive values? Does the measure work only for a 2x2 table or for one that is larger? Is the measure symmetric or asymmetric? When the measure is asymmetric, it takes on different values depending on which of your two variables you specify as dependent and which one you specify as independent. And this is the case for lambda, as you can see, the one that you can see here. So there are a number of issues to consider. SPSS can give you some help with that. Click on the Help button and you get a list of statistics. Let's scroll down here and just click on the link that says Show Details. And there you get the description of the contingency coefficient, of phi, lambda, and so forth. And also, don't forget to use the results coach if you need guidance in interpreting your results. You would do that by right-clicking on any of the output table.